Here is a question that sounds simple, but is actually not. What does it actually take to fix an airline? Not patch it, not stabilize it, not stop the bleeding and call it a recovery, but actually fix it. Rebuild it from the inside out. Change what it stands for. Change how it operates. Change what passengers think of it. And change what the financial results say. All at the same time, all without the clean slate that a bankruptcy gives you. Because that is what Scott Kirby set out to do when he became chief executive of United Airlines in May 2020. And the reason it is such an interesting question is that almost nobody believed it was possible. Not for United, not with the history United was carrying. This is the story of how he did it, and why the crisis that is hitting United right now, the worst fuel shock since the pandemic, is the most honest test of whether what he built is real or whether it only worked in good times. United Airlines traces its roots to Varney Airlines in 1926, became United Airlines in 1931, and spent most of the 20th century as one of America's premier carriers. Transcontinental routes, Pacific routes, a hub at Chicago O'Hare that made it one of the most connected domestic networks in the world. By the late 90s, United was struggling. Labor relations were a persistent problem. The airline's attempt to acquire US Airways in 2000 was blocked by regulators. The September 11 attacks in 2001 devastated premium transatlantic and transcontinental demand. United filed for bankruptcy in December 2002, the largest airline bankruptcy in American history at that point. It emerged from Chapter 11 in 2006, a leaner airline with restructured debt and renegotiated labor agreements. But leaner did not mean well managed. United spent the years from 2006 through 2009 accumulating a reputation that was genuinely damaging. Operational performance was poor. Customer satisfaction scores were consistently the lowest among the major carriers. The product was tired. The culture was fractious. Then came the merger with Continental Airlines in 2010. Continental was a different institution. Under Chief Executive Jeff Smisek, Continental had rebuilt its culture, its product, and its reputation through the late 90s and the 2000s into something the aviation industry genuinely respected. It had won customer satisfaction awards. Its employees felt a sense of ownership and pride that United's workforce conspicuously lacked. When Continental merged with United to form United Continental Holdings in 2010, the combined airline had the network and the scale to be formidable. The execution was not the best, to say the least. The technology integration was a disaster. Two airlines with different reservation systems, different check-in technology, and different operational platforms were forced onto a single unified system before that system was ready. For months, United passengers experienced disruption, incorrect bookings, misrouted bags, and customer service failures that made headline news. Corporate travel managers moved their contracts to Delta and American. Frequent flyers defected. The loyalty that Continental had built over a decade evaporated in 6 months of technological chaos. Jeff Smisek resigned in 2015 amid an unrelated corruption investigation. Oscar Munoz took over as chief executive and began stabilizing the operation, rebuilding employee relations, and addressing the most visible customer experience failures. Progress was real, but slow. United was still, by almost every measure, trailing Delta significantly in operational performance, customer satisfaction, and unit revenue. And then, Scott Kirby arrived. Kirby came to United from American Airlines, where he had served as president. He brought something unusual to the role: a data-driven, almost clinical view of the airline industry's competitive dynamics, combined with strong convictions about what United specifically needed to do differently. His central conviction was this: United had a better network than it was being given credit for. Its hub structure, anchored at Chicago O'Hare, Newark Liberty, Washington Dulles, Houston, Denver, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, gave it connectivity that Delta and American genuinely could not match on specific city pairs and international routes. United was the only carrier connecting certain mid-continental American cities to the world. It had a natural monopoly or near monopoly position on dozens of routes where no competitor could economically enter. But United was not monetizing that network advantage. It was competing on price in markets where it should have been competing on quality. It was treating its network strength as a given rather than as an asset to be actively managed and sold at a premium. He arrived in May 2020, 3 weeks after the pandemic had reduced global aviation to near zero. Most airline chief executives in that position did the obvious thing. They preserved cash by shrinking the airline, they retired aircraft, they froze hiring, they suspended routes. The logic was sound. No passengers, no revenue, no point flying. Kirby did the opposite. He kept United's entire wide-body fleet. He refused to retire pilots. He continued ordering new aircraft. He used the empty months of the pandemic to retrofit cabins, upgrade technology infrastructure, and prepare for a recovery he was certain would come. His colleagues thought he was taking an enormous risk. His competitors thought he was making a mistake. His board trusted him. And when travel came back, United came back faster, larger, and with a better product than any rival had the capacity to match. Because while they were shrinking, United had been growing. Before I continue, here's something that surprises me every time I check my analytics. More than 90% of the people watching this video right now are not subscribed. 90%. United is changing aviation, and most people have no idea it even happened. That is exactly the kind of story that needs to reach further. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, share this with one person who follows everything on aviation. Now, let's continue. The plan that formalized all of this thinking was called United Next. Announced in 2021, while the pandemic was still grounding most of the industry, it was built on 3 pillars. The first was fleet renewal at a scale nobody in American aviation had attempted in decades. United placed orders for 270 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft and more than 50 Boeing 787 Dreamliner wide-bodies in 2021 alone. Combined with existing orders, the total order book exceeded 700 aircraft to be delivered by the end of the decade. The plan was to replace the oldest, least efficient aircraft in the fleet with modern jets offering better fuel economics, better passenger experience, and better operational reliability simultaneously. The second pillar was the upgauge strategy. United's regional network, operating under the United Express brand, had historically used small 50-seat jets on thin routes connecting smaller cities to mainline hubs. The upgauge strategy replaced many of those jets with larger Boeing 737 MAX and Airbus A321neo aircraft. More seats per departure, lower cost per seat. A dramatically better passenger experience on routes where United's competition was a 2-hour drive rather than another airline. The third pillar was international expansion. Kirby believed United's international network was underbuilt relative to its domestic position and relative to the premium international demand that existed from the cities United served. The pandemic had created an opportunity as competitors suspended routes. United launched new international services at a pace no other American carrier matched. In 2024 and 2025, United launched service to more new international destinations than any other American airline, becoming the only carrier serving Bangkok in Thailand, Adelaide in Australia, and Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam from the United States. But here's the thing about United's transformation that most coverage misses. It was not primarily a strategy story. It was a technology story. The United post-merger integration failure in 2010 and 2011 had been one of the most damaging operational events in American airline history. The lesson Kirby drew from it went deeper than most understood. It was not that technology integrations need better project management. It was that an airline's competitive position in the 21st century is inseparable from the quality of its technology infrastructure. An airline with poor technology will always fail operationally. An airline with great technology can find efficiencies and customer experiences that competitors with legacy systems cannot replicate. Kirby invested heavily in rebuilding United's technology from the ground up. The Connection Saver tool, which holds gates or delays departures by minutes to allow at-risk passengers to make connections, prevented over 1 million missed connections in 2025 alone. The United app was used by over 85% of customers on the day of travel by 2025. More than half of customers who experienced a cancellation resolved their rebooking entirely through self-service digital tools without speaking to an agent. Starlink satellite Wi-Fi began rolling out across the fleet in 2025, with nearly all dual-cabin United Express regional aircraft equipped by January 2026. Free, high-speed, low-latency Wi-Fi on every flight at no charge. United was the first major American airline to commit to this at fleet-wide scale. The premium cabin investment tells the same story. The Polaris business class rollout accelerated. New Polaris seating with direct aisle access is now fitted across the international wide-body fleet. In 2025, United announced the Polaris Studio Suite for the Boeing 787-9, 25% larger than the standard Polaris seat, with privacy doors, an ottoman, 27-inch screens, and champagne and caviar service at the very top. These suites enter service in 2026. United flew a record 27.4 million premium seats in 2025, more than any American carrier had ever operated in a single year. The full year 2025 results, reported in January 2026, told the story of where the transformation had arrived. Total operating revenue of $59.1 billion, the highest in United's history. Net income of $3.4 billion. Free cash flow of $2.7 billion. 181 million passengers carried a company record. The largest ever mainline schedule with 303 daily wide-body departures. Ranked number 2 in on-time departures with the lowest seat cancellation rate in company history. United Express completed 134 consecutive days without a single cancellation. For 2026, United was guiding to adjusted earnings per share of between $12 and $14, implying growth of over 20% at the midpoint. The airline planned to take delivery of approximately 120 new aircraft in 2026, including 20 Boeing 787 Dreamliners, more wide-body deliveries in a single year than any American passenger airline since 1988. The transformation looked complete. The numbers were the proof. But then the Gulf went dark. Jet fuel prices more than doubled in the 3 weeks following the US and Israeli strikes on Iran that began on February 28, 2026. United suspended service to Tel Aviv and Dubai. Routes across the Middle East were disrupted. Longer reroutings around closed airspace burned additional fuel on every flight that still operated. United, like almost every major American carrier, does not hedge its fuel costs, meaning every cent of the price increase flows directly through to its operating expenses without any financial buffer. On March 21st, 2026, Kirby sent a memo to employees that was one of the most candid communications any major airline chief executive has published during a crisis. He said jet fuel prices had more than doubled in 3 weeks. He said United was preparing for oil to reach $175 a barrel and remain above $100 through the end of 2027. He said that at those levels, United's annual fuel bill would rise by approximately $11 billion, more than twice the profit the airline had earned in its best year ever. United earned $3.4 billion in net income in 2025. An $11 billion fuel cost increase would not just eliminate that profit, it would produce a loss of historic proportions. His response to this scenario was revealing. United will cut approximately 5% of its planned capacity in the second and third quarters of 2026, targeting the least profitable routes. Off-peak flying, midweek services, red-eye departures, and Saturday routes are being pulled. Capacity at Chicago O'Hare is being trimmed by approximately 1 percentage point. Service at Tel Aviv and Dubai remains suspended. But Kirby was explicit about what he would not do. No furloughs, no deferred aircraft deliveries, no cost-cutting exercises, no downgrades to regional jets. The long-term aircraft delivery schedule continues. The growth strategy remains intact. 120 aircraft are still being delivered in 2026. Another 130 are due by April 2028. His message to employees was direct. There is no point burning cash in the near term on flying that just cannot absorb these fuel costs. But nothing changes about the longer term plans. Here is why that matters for the broader story of what Kirby built. In 2020, he refused to shrink when shrinking was the rational choice. He kept the fleet, kept the pilots, kept the orders, and used the downtime to build a better airline. When travel returned, United was ready, and its competitors were not. In 2026, facing the worst fuel shock since the pandemic, he is making the same call. Cut the unprofitable flying now. Protect the long-term investment. Do not let a short-term crisis destroy a long-term strategy. The difference between 2020 and 2026 is that this time, the airline he is protecting is not the broken institution he inherited. It is the rebuilt one. And the rebuilt one is considerably more capable of absorbing a crisis without structural damage, because the technology is better, the product is stronger, the network is more diversified, and the customer relationships are deeper. United's 10 biggest revenue weeks in its history all occurred in the 10 weeks before the crisis hit. Demand remains strong despite the disruption. Fares booked since the crisis began are running 15 to 20% higher than before it, as airlines pass fuel costs through to new bookings. The capacity cuts United is making are expected to support pricing power across the industry, because fewer seats mean stronger yields on the seats that remain. The competitive question that the crisis has reopened is whether United's aggressive growth strategy, which Kirby pursued specifically because he believed United's network was underutilized, now becomes a liability in a high fuel environment. Delta, with its Trainer refinery partially insulating it from crack spread movements, its more conservative balance sheet, and its investment-grade credit rating, is in a structurally stronger position to weather an extended fuel shock. United has the best ever revenue base, the strongest network it has ever operated, and an aircraft delivery schedule that is the largest capital commitment in American aviation. It also has no fuel hedge, more capacity than any US peer, and debt obligations that require continued strong revenue to service. Kirby has said clearly that he thinks there is a good chance the worst case scenario does not materialize, that the conflict resolves, that fuel prices normalize, and that the capacity cuts prove to have been a brief and sensible tactical adjustment rather than the beginning of a longer retreat. If he is right, United will emerge from this crisis in the same position it emerged from the pandemic, having made the right calls while others hesitated, and better positioned than anyone expected. If he is wrong, well, the test of what the quiet transformation actually built will be considerably more demanding than anything United has faced since the bankruptcy. The transformation is real. It is financially documented. It happened without a single dramatic moment that the industry pointed to and called the turning point. Kirby arrived at an airline that had failed its customers so systematically for so long that its reputation had become its biggest liability. He rebuilt the technology, he renewed the fleet, he expanded the network, he upgraded the product, he invested in the people. And he did it without the clean slate that a bankruptcy restructuring provides, without the dramatic narrative that most turnaround stories require, and without most of the aviation industry fully noticing until the results made it impossible to ignore. Now the results are being tested in conditions that nobody planned for. The quiet transformation was 5 years in the making. What it is worth under pressure is the question that 2026 will answer. What do you think of his strategy? And will the future look bright for United? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more on aviation and drop your comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and want to actually understand how aircraft work beyond surface level explanations, there's a great resource I recommend. It's called Flight Unveiled. It's a complete bundle that covers both pilot knowledge and aircraft engineering, from aerodynamics and systems to flight instruments, navigation, and real-world operations. Instead of piecing information together from different videos, it gives you a structured, deeper understanding of aviation in one place. You can click the link that appears now in the right upper corner or in the description below.